Hey YouTubers, how are you? Today's project video is on installing an electric toilet and holding tank in our Cobalt 250. And it's a little different at the start of this video that we're in my office and with my kid's messy background over there. Because it turns out that I lost some of the footage that I had recorded of the very beginning stages of the project, where I was making measurements and describing the plans of how I was going to pull this off. We have a Cobalt 250. It's a 25-foot bowrider, and it had the Porta-Pottie in it, and we have two little boys, and they decided that every time we went out on the boat, they needed to use the Porta-Pottie. And the Porta-Pottie leaves like this, it's like an inch gap at the bottom between where the pump out tube doesn't reach down to the bottom, and I probably could have improved that a little bit, but it was just a real mess, and it managed to, I could never get it empty enough when we pumped it out, and the holding tank was extremely small in it, and so when the kids were needing to use it almost every time we went out, I had to pump it out almost every time we went out, and that was getting to be annoying. So I decided I could make it better, and we decided to go ahead and put in a holding tank and a little electric flush toilet. So I'm going to try to walk you through just some quick background slides to bring you up to speed on where I have the footage that I can take over with my typical videos. And so please, again, ignore the mess in the background here. All right, let's see if we can switch over to the video. Okay, so, the slides rather. So the first slide is some pictures that I do have of when, this is after we pulled out the Porta-Pottie, and I was making some measurements on what toilet I could fit in here. And so measuring the width, measuring the depth. I had also made some marks about where the front of the old Porta-Pottie toilet seat was, so that I could kind of get some estimates and make sure that I didn't pick a toilet that was too big and it wasn't going to fit, or was going to be too tall. I mean, it was already a pretty tough lack of headroom and knee room as it was, so we didn't want to make that any more problematic. And then I climbed into the ski locker. I did a lot of that last winter and spring, doing the other projects that you can find on YouTube. So I was down in the ski locker, and ahead of the ski locker is the front of the boat. And it's pretty cavernous down there. There's really a lot of room down in the front of the 250. And I had waffled between trying to cram a smaller storage tank right behind the Porta-Pottie, or I thought I could fit, or behind the toilet rather, or I thought I could fit a bigger one up in this front area, and ultimately that's what I decided to do. So here's some pictures that I pulled out of the Cobalt owner's manual, and the standard Porta-Pottie is here. They did offer it with this through-hull pump out or something, I guess, a little macerator pump. But this is the ski locker right here. So the blue is the ski locker, or just about the ski locker. And the plan was to then go ahead and put this storage tank up here. And I made a lot of different measurements about what I could try to fit. I didn't want to buy a tank and then discover that I wouldn't be able to fit it. So I erred on the side of a size slightly smaller than I might be able to get in there, just in case I ran into some issues where, like, trying to finagle it through the ski locker opening and getting it through that angle and into place up here. I didn't want to make anything too tight. As it was, I did make it a little more complicated than I probably needed to. The 9 gallons, as it turns out, is more than enough for our usage. I probably could have gone smaller. And so then for the water to flush the toilet, my boat, I was fortunate enough that my boat does have a 10-gallon freshwater tank on board for the, I have the rear shower on mine. And so my plan was to use that water tank to supply the toilet via the existing pump that's on there. So my plan was I'm just going to tee off of the pump outlet and then run that back to the new toilet. And basically there's already a switch, an auxiliary switch in the head area that I decided I was going to wire back to the pump, and there would be two switches basically to turn the pump on, one in the head and one on the back for the shower, and it would pressurize the line in both directions when the switch was on, and then you could just shut it off when you weren't using it. So if you needed the shower, you could turn the pump on from the shower. If you needed the toilet, you could turn the pump on from the toilet. Okay, so here's a side view just to show a couple of more details before we get into the actual install videos. This is in my boat, just one I found online, and basically the plan that I had going into this was we were going to use a Thetford Nano toilet, which was the smallest electric flush toilet I actually could find. The seat height was about the same as the old Porta-Pottie, and the seat, the front position of the seat was just about a half an inch or an inch or so behind where the old Porta-Pottie was. So it should give us a tiny bit more knee room and about the same amount of headroom as we had before. And then I was going to put that tank in up front, and I wanted the tank to be angled slightly down so that the I could try to get the pumping out to be as efficient as possible and evacuate as much of the tank as I could whenever we did go and pump out. And so to make sure that that happened predictably, the feed tube or hose from the toilet would go towards the bow side of that tank, and then the vent would go to the original vent, and you can actually see it on this boat. It's actually right there, so I missed that a little bit. And then the pump out will go to the original pump out spot, and I would put new hoses in all three of these locations because the pump out hose and the vent hose aren't long enough to reach the tank, and obviously this one is new as well. So the tank that I got is like I said, it's about a 9-gallon tank. I got it from the tank depot, and I got one that had no holes in it, so that I could fit the tank in, make sure that I could secure it down, and then put the holes exactly where I wanted them. And to do that, I purchased these Uniseal fittings that are highly regarded by people that do this regularly. So the time that I start this video, I've already purchased the tank and the toilet, and I've equipped the boat with some of the mounting features. I had to epoxy some pieces into the boat so that I could get some supports and mounting, some mounting. Basically, you'll see it's a bar and I basically use a long strut essentially that reaches out over the top of the tank and braces it against the deck above it, and so that seems to be working pretty well. We've got a whole season with it like this, and everything's stayed secured, no leaks. Pump out works just fine, and the tank flushing all works just great. So so where I am is I've fitted the tank in to the boat and marked where all the holes should be to go to the hoses that I described earlier. So from that, we will jump to the videos that I have not lost. Thank you for watching. The next step for the new toilet install is to prep the tank. I measured the boat and found a tank that I believed I could get to fit well and still give me reasonable volume for storage. and but I ordered mine without any fittings so that I could put them right where I wanted. When the tank is sitting in the boat, it's going to be tilted up slightly. Let's see if I can show it. It's going to be tilted like this, where the front of the tank is going to be tilted up. So I'm going to put the pump out dip tube towards the back, and then the hose coming from the toilet will go up in the front, and then I'll put the vent up there as well. So I've marked it all off, and now I've got to drill 2 of the holes for the 1 1/4 inch tube and 1 hole for the 1 inch vent tube. As it turns out, the vent tube, the vent hose that's in the boat will reach. It's not 1 inch. So for now, I do have a new through hull for the 1 inch hose. If I get the opportunity, I'll change that out. But for now, I'm just gonna put in the 1 inch hole here, and then I have an adapter that I'll adapt down to the smaller diameter vent tube. So I used the Uniseal, or I'm going to use the Uniseal fittings. And pro tip here: buy the Uniseal fittings straight from Uniseal, and it's much cheaper than if you get them from the tank manufacturers. So the Uniseal fittings come with a sheet that tells you what the drill sizes need to be. So I'm going to use this sheet as a guide and drill these things out. Okay, so the next step will be to clean up these holes and then install the Uniseals. I'm just going to use a little sandpaper just to smooth it out just a little bit.
So now I've opened up the holes on the boat for where the drainage pipe for the toilet, as well as the feed hose for the clean water to go into the bowl. And that hole at the bottom is actually for the power connector. I'm going to feed that through the bottom, and I'm going to put the control module down underneath. It will be a little bit easier for me to make all the wiring connections down there than to try to do it behind the toilet. So I've added those. I'm going to now move the toilet into position, and then I can start securing the toilet and getting all the connections hooked up. So if we look down in the bilge, this is a little tight. I apologize if any of this gets out of focus, but you can see where I've installed the tank into my boat. This is just forward of the ski locker. You can see this, the end of the ski locker right there. And what I've done is I've epoxied a piece of PVC board down underneath into the hull with some side supports, and then I've added this piece of wood here that this is just the right size to secure, be able to hold the tank in the right spot forward aft. And then I'll use this to secure some straps that will strap around, as well as, I don't know if you can see them here, but there's some frame members of the boat, and I'm going to send a strap across those as well to hold the tank down in addition to the strap on this rear beam. Now, originally I was planning on sending the pump out tube forward, straight forward, up to the pump out. I now think I'm going to route it back and around where the original one went, which is, if we look just over to the port of the boat, the original one went up there. That's the hole back to the toilet. So I'm going to try to see if I run it up there, then I don't need to add a little hole in the storage area underneath the front seats. So I'm going to see if I can route it back there. It'll make pumping out maybe not quite as good, but it will also make it so that I can not cut an additional hole up underneath the seats, which might allow extra water or something to get in. So that will be better. So we'll see how that works out. Here we are in the bilge, and the tank is now mounted and all the hoses are installed. And I'll back away so you can kind of see, sort of get a sense of how it's mounted in there. But it was tight quarters here at the edge of the ski locker. And so trying to get straps all around the tank is kind of tricky. So what I did was I put a very substantial cross beam in just in front of the tank. And then from that I can bolt in. I have some side brackets mounted to that wood. They're aluminum that will hold the tank from shifting left or right. There's a cross beam that I epoxied in place to the hull that it's sitting on at the bottom. And then in the center, there's an aluminum C-channel that's bolted down to that piece of wood. And in the bow section of that, if you can see that, there's basically a stainless steel carriage bolt that is bolted to the front of it, and it goes through the aluminum C-channel, and it's pulled back against the tank, so it prevents the tank from shifting forward or aft, and it also provides some support to that aluminum C-channel from above by pressing against the deck above. And this combination was something that I could install inside the ski locker and still secure the tank quite well. As you can see, I've hooked up the hoses. They are going into the direction that the hoses were originally set up in this boat. I decided not to run the pump out hose to the front because I would have had to cut right into one of the storage areas that we use and still bend it around the forward bulkhead. So I really wanted to prevent that kind of intrusion on some of our storage areas. So I did run the longer hose all the way back the way it came. And this should still provide a much better ability to clear out the tank the way it's installed. So all the wires for the toilet, except for the power wires, are the only ones that are left. Everything else is connected. and I'll show you where the switch is installed. Here in the bathroom area, you can see I ended up mounting the switch down on, this is sort of the plexiglass, I'm sorry, not plex, this is the fiberglass mold that makes up the bathroom, the lower half of it anyway. And there's a little shelf here that you can use for storage or whatnot. This ended up being probably the easiest spot to put this. I considered putting it up here, but I would have had to cut through the vinyl and some cushion and get it positioned just right so that I could have run the wires behind where the latch is, and that seemed to be a little more complicated. The switch seemed pretty waterproof, so even if this gets a little moist down here, I'm not too worried about this getting impacted. And running the wire from here was pretty simple because the opening down here just goes right back and behind the toilet, and that's where the control panel is. So this is all installed. You just got to hook up the power and connect the supply hose to the existing pump, and we're good to go. I did get lucky. There's a switch panel in the bathroom here on this boat, and there's an auxiliary switch. And so I grabbed that auxiliary switch output, and I'm going to run that to a relay that's in the back, if my camera focuses. It's in the back of the boat that supplies the washdown hose. I'm going to hook a relay up, and that's going to supply the toilet input water from my 10-gallon tank that's in the back of the boat. Okay, this is the recap of the toilet install. It's been now over a year and a half since the last video clip was put together, and so we've had the toilet in the boat for quite a while, and I had to and gotten some use with it, and I figured I'd just recap where we finished. So here's the toilet. It's the Thetford Nano porcelain toilet. It's about the same size as the Porta-Pottie that it replaced, and if we go in here, you can see there's the control panel right there to add water and to flush, and then up on the wall I turned that auxiliary panel into a pump switch so that I can also turn the pump on from here. This is the pump that controls the fresh water pump that was originally tied to just the rear swim platform shower, the rinse shower. In the background you can hear my children giggling in the water. So if we turn the pump on and we add our water, that all just does exactly what it's supposed to do. And then if we hold down the flush button, it does a little flush. And so, so far this has been, really nice to have the ease of not having to clean anything up, not having to pull out a porta-potty, and the smell associated with the porta-potty's all gone away, which is great. We don't use it a whole lot. This is more sort of emergency use only on this boat, but we're very glad to have it, and I'll wrap this video up. Hopefully this video can help you.